Welcome back to the channel, everyone. We're back on our 76 Trans Am Pro Touring project. This is episode 15. As you can see behind me, we've got the body onto the lift. It's off the rotisserie. We have our new Roadster Shop spec chassis sitting down below it. Last episode, we installed the LSA engine and TR6060 transmission from the 2012 Cadillac CTS-V. Let's go ahead and see if we can't set the body down on this new chassis and kind of see how everything lines up. So as you can see here, we do have our motor and transmission setting into place. Off camera, we went ahead and installed our body mounts here onto the new frame, at least the ones that are sitting on the frame, between the frame and the body. We did that all the way across the back. Now this chassis, you do have some mounts back here in the back. There's a little plate here that mounts onto the bottom of the body where the factory leaf spring mount would go here on the front. So this is this body mount here. Then on the back, this one here is a brand new body mount that the Roadster Shop has put into place, and you'll actually drill into the factory rear subframe rails and mount a like a nutsert inside of the frame. So we went ahead and got that set into place, and then of course the brackets here on the back bolt up to the rear leaf spring locations on the factory subframe. So again, motor transmission is setting into place. We do have our core support setting on here. So once we set the body down onto this chassis, we'll kind of have a little bit better idea of how things are going to line up. So let's get the camera set up and see where this thing lands. Okay, so we have the body setting down as far as it'll go right now. We kind of get a first look at how this engine is going to look in here with the body setting on. So one thing that we did realize, or we do know right here just from looking at this, is we have a clearance issue here with our clutch cable coming up from a transmission here is hitting on the firewall, which this doesn't look to be a big deal. This bracket is actually bolted to the transmission, so we can either modify the bracket and move this down just a little bit to get our clearance, which is I think what we'll probably have to do there. Now we did go ahead and put we put plumb bobs on this body to help line it up with the chassis, so it actually set down on there pretty well. So what I'm going to do is we're going to readjust our lift and get underneath it and actually pick the frame, body, and everything up, because I do know that we are going to have to modify our floor. Thanks to all the engineering work that the Roadster Shop has done, we do know that with using the TR6060 transmission, we will have to modify the floor just a little bit for clearance, which we already suspected we were going to have to do. So when we put this floor in, you remember this was just a complete one-piece floor. There's no provisions for any kind of shifters or anything there. So we already knew we was going to have to cut a hole for our shifter to come through. So let's get underneath and see what that looks like, because that is keeping the body from going all the way down onto the chassis at the front. So let's pick it up and make sure that we don't have any other clearance issues. So now with the frame underneath the car and everything picked up, we can kind of get a better idea of how everything is looking. And as expected, you can see here that the transmission, this is where the shifter hooks up, the remote shifter for the transmission. It's actually hitting on the body there. Hopefully you can see that there, hitting on both sides. So we'll have to mark that. And also, I've already kind of come in and put a mark up there on the very, very top of the transmission where it would hit the floor. We put a mark on that just to kind of make sure, because once that goes up, looks like that's going to get really, really close there as well. You can see that the body still has to go down a good inch or so. So once we do that, we know that would actually clear, because that's not quite an inch there. And then again, with the 3D scans that the Roadster shop has done, that is an area where the transmission interferes with the floor as well. Everything else on this chassis looks like it would line up very well. I'm just going to kind of stick this pin through here, and you can see how well everything lines up with our factory mounting locations. Again, very, very solid chassis. Let's go ahead and get this marked up here where the transmission is interfering. Get that cut so we can set this body on down and make sure there's no other clearance issues there. So now we have our body picked back up off of the frame. You can see there where the line for the clutch was actually hitting on the firewall. We can take and just remove this bracket for the time being. Then we'll kind of line that up and figure us out a new mounting location there for that line. Also see where we marked everything here on the transmission. This was the top of the transmission there that we still had a little clearance, but once we clearance for the shifter, that's going to come back down and it will still give us a little interference. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to come all the way up to here, and I'm going to make a cut all the way down, and kind of we'll pick this whole area back up. We are going to run into a little bit of issue here with this cross member. We'll have to cut some of that out of the way and brace that all back up. Our actual shifter goes in right in this area here. So not a big deal. We can come in here, we can modify this, rebuild it. Once we get some of this cut out of the way, we'll set the body back down and kind of go from there. Now that we have our hole cut out of the floor, let's lower the body back down and see if that gets us where we need to be on the frame rails. So the body is pretty much sitting down onto the frame. The passenger side here is completely down on top of our body mount. On the driver side, it's up just a little bit. And so now we have found that we are hitting on this stud here is actually hitting the firewall. We did remove that bracket for the clutch. You can see it just kind of hanging there. I think what we can do is that's a bolt with an extra stud on the back of it. We can just take that out, put a regular bolt into that bell housing. That would clear that. Another thing that we run into, of course, cutting the floor out really helped that. We've kind of got the shifter setting in here. You can see we didn't quite trim enough off the back. I've done that intentionally. I'd always rather cut a little extra than cut too much. And then if you look how from straight down where the tabs for the shifter bolt up, it's actually interfering a little bit there with that cross member that we cut out. You kind of watched when we set the body down, it kind of shifted just a little bit, and that's what that was, is that was kind of going around this extra cross member. So we'll do a little bit more trimming here, a little bit more trimming here at the back. We'll change that bolt out, or at least just take it out for the time being, and make sure that that sits down here. Then we should be able to determine how we're going to go back in and start building us a new floor for the transmission tunnel. So after we got the transmission tunnel trimmed a little bit more, we went ahead and set the body back down onto the frame and picked everything back up. so we can look at underneath. We are now sitting all the way down pretty much onto our front mounts here. We've got a little space there. Once we pull all that down into place, that would work. We had an issue here with this bolt hitting the firewall. So you can see there right behind that header, we took that bolt and dropped it down and simply swapped places. So this bolt was originally down here. We simply swapped those. Now we have plenty of room here between our firewall and the back of the motor. Another issue that we've run into is here on the back of the frame. The frame bolts up using the factory leaf spring hanger mounts. So you can see here that we're actually off a little bit. This needs to come down so it would bolt up. And then you can also tell back here at the back that the frame is hanging down a little bit low. So we've got to looking and doing some inspecting. And I think our issue is going to be here. This is the factory exhaust hanger mounts. And it's hitting there on both sides of the frame rail where this cross member comes across. You can see there that it's hitting as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and I'm going to drop everything back down, pick just the body up. We can drill out these factory spot welds here. We really don't need these exhaust mounts anyway. They have provided us provisions here to bolt in a new exhaust hanger here. So we're going to cut those. And then also I'm looking back here at this bracket right back here in the back. I don't know if that is going to get in the way of this upper mount. I can get my finger through there right now, but if we set this down on top of here, that may be an issue. So I guess we'll handle one thing at a time. We'll go ahead and set everything back down. We'll get those two hangers knocked off, get them out of the way. We'll reevaluate and see how everything looks after that. So here at the back of the car, we do have everything setting down onto the frame completely now. The rear body back here, everything lines up into place here, how it should now. Cutting those extra exhaust hangers off really made a lot of difference. So one other thing that we had to do here is they include with this chassis a new body mount right here. Now this is not an original location for a body mount. And according to the Roadster Shop's paperwork, it is optional. But what we've done is, since it's there, we want to use it. So we've got it put into place here. And then I've just run a felt tip Sharpie all around the edge here. So you can't really get in here to the inside of this to get a good mark on the inside of this. So I've marked the outside of where that bushing lies onto that frame rail. So when we pick the body back up here again, we can line that back up and we can get a good mark on that. You have to drill a hole and weld in a plug here for basically so this new body mount can thread into the bottom of the frame rail there. So we're going to get everything here, loosen it back up, take the body back off one more time, and we'll get those holes drilled there. So as we mentioned earlier in the video, this body mount right here at the rear is the one that we're working on here now. So as you can see, when we marked it up here before, this is where the bushing lands onto the rear subrail. So we're going to take and center this back up here, take this body mount off. We can simply hold this back up here now. We can line everything back up and mark the very center of that bushing, and then we'll know where we need to drill our hole at. So let me get the camera set up and we'll do just that. So this is what we will be using. The Roadster Shop sent these with our kit. We have to drill a 3/4 inch hole into the rear subrail and then recess that down into there and weld that in. And then once we do all that, that'll give our body mount. Once we come in here, we can put our bolt through and everything will tighten back up. So now we have our mounts welded into place. We did that on both sides. We did lay a welding blanket down here just to kind of cover up this gas tank. Even though there's no gas or anything in it, we didn't want to damage the stainless. Again, this side here. So we're just going to go over the belt sander, just kind of clean that up a little bit, and then we'll set this body back down. We should be able to start all of our body mounts at that point. So now that we have the body setting down onto the chassis, we're going to go ahead and focus in here on fixing our hole here for our transmission. So as you can see here, I've kind of just propped up the shifter in the approximate location of where it's going to be. I also took a piece, this is just an 18 gauge flat sheet metal that I kind of bent up real quick, just kind of get us a shape to start with. And I put a 3/4 inch roll of tape underneath it just to kind of space it out. So that gives us enough room here to where everything will clear on the transmission. And I've got it fitting up pretty close here with the sides of the transmission tunnel. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I'm going to clean this metal off here. I'm going to tack weld this piece of metal to the transmission tunnel. That way I can remove the tape, and then we will go ahead and pattern out from there up to our cut up here. And then we'll have to kind of come in here and figure out what our shape is going to be here around the shifter. So our goal is there, we don't want a very big hole there for our shifter. We want to be able to use this plate here to where it'll seal back down onto the floor. So as you can see here, I'm going to have to raise this section up a little bit so where it will actually bolt back down into that. So we've got to figure all that out. So let me start with this. That way I can kind of come in from here up to this point, and then we'll figure out how we're going to attach this here. So to get my pattern for the floor pan here, I'm just going to use some 2-inch tape, and we're going to stack that in and layer that up, and that'll go from the front up here all the way back here to this cross member that we welded in, or this piece of sheet metal rather. And as you can see, we do have clearance here. It's kind of hard to tell, but they do have clearance between the bolts and the bottom of that tape. So as Chip Foose said one time, clearance is clearance. So that's all we need. So we're going to go ahead and finish taping that out, and that'll give us a pretty decent pattern of the piece of sheet metal that we need to cut out. Okay, so we've got our piece of sheet metal. This is again just 18 gauge sheet metal. You see me take my tape template and laid it out. I run that through a bead roller with a tipping wheel here, just get our 90-degree bend here, and just kind of faded it out there. I also used it to kind of replicate this this ridge right here up toward the front of that. So I've got it to where it pretty much overlaps about half of the other little sheet metal piece that we put in. Let me get over here to the other side so you can see that. So again, here on the passenger side, you can see everything lines up pretty well here. I've got my paint cleaned off here to where we can get a nice little weld here on that. So I think we'll be ready to weld that into place. But before I do that, I want to go ahead and leave that loose, and I want to go ahead and focus on this rear piece back here. It's going to be a little bit more complicated to build. So I'll start on that and see where that takes me. So we spent a little time here making our next piece for the transmission tunnel. We started out with a piece of poster board and just kind of got everything laid out. Now the shifter is actually leaning back a little bit. There's a other plate that goes in here that bolts to the shifter itself. And then you can see there we have some nutserts that we put in to actually hold that down to there. So we're going to go ahead and get all of this welded up. Turned out to be a pretty neat little piece there. Did it in 2 sections. Again, just 18 gauge sheet metal. So we're going to go ahead and get this welded up here, get it completed, and then I'm going to get some help, and we're going to start hanging our new doors and setting our gaps. So I think this video here will probably finish this one up here. I may show you some footage there of getting it welded and ground down some finished shots. But until then, hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.